become a member of the Catholic Church.
Love the Catholic Church. It's just the best place to be.
From the studios of EWTN, this is Open Line. In North America, call toll-free 1-800-585-9396. That's 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985. You can also send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
Well, it's Tuesday. That means we're talking issues and topics of the culture here on Open Line with your host on Tuesday, Barbara McGuigan. I'm Jack Williams. Elena Rodriguez produces the program, and your call screener is Mr. Matt Gabinski. If you'd like to be part of the program, the number is 1-800-585-9396. That's toll-free anywhere in North America. 1-800-585-9396. If you're outside the United States and Canada, your number is 1-205-271-2985. That's 1-205-271-2985, and we will put you straight to the front of the line. Or you can send us an email if you'd rather state your question that way. And the email address is openline@ewtn.com, and put Tuesday or Barbara McGuigan or pro-life in the subject line, and we'll make sure that it gets to where it needs to go. Our hostess, as she is every day, the lovely and talented Barbara McGuigan. Nana, how are you?
Oh, Nana. I'm called Mimi, actually.
Mimi, how are you?
Mimi couldn't be better. We had our 14th grandbaby on Sunday night, and she is such a beauty. 6 pounds, 12 ounces, 18 inches long, and because my son and his beautiful wife, I have a great devotion to St. Joseph and, of course, St. Therese. They named the baby, this little tiny thing is Josephine Therese. And so they're going to call her Joe or Josie or something like that.
And this is your son.
Yes,
our son. Who is one man. Yes. Your daughter-in-law, who is one woman.
Amen. Yes.
And the product of their relationship is a little baby.
Yes.
That has certain rights protected by the Constitution.
Yeah.
Because she's helpless and doesn't have those rights. Now, that's still legal in California? For one man and one woman to be married and have a child?
It is.
I just want to make sure.
It is. Yep, I know it is.
You never know.
I know. You don't ever know, and that's what we had this past weekend, Jack, and I'm telling you, the decision Friday seemed so extreme to me and so far removed from any constitutional reasoning, but then I thought
you and a few Supreme Court justices as well.
A few others, right? And then I thought what Charlie Rice said, Professor Charlie Rice, God rest his soul, he said when America's faith, it also loses its mind. And, and then when you read the dissents, did you have the chance to read the dissents?
I did not. I did make note of the fact that that each dissenting justice wanted their own opinion entered into the record, which is highly unusual.
Yes, but you know what? No matter what people in general think about this whole marriage debate, I mean, some would say the debate is over for sure. But to me, I thought it was very frightening to see 5 citizens, 5 lawyers, rule 350 million citizens based on nothing more than their personal preferences. To me, and I think to the 4 dissenting justices, this is an even bigger issue to our religious freedom than it is even to legalizing same-sex marriage. So, but I wanted to ask you, Jack, what did you think when you saw the White House turned into a rainbow flag?
That's really kind of a hot button issue. That whole flag and
Mm-hmm.
the in-your-face way in which it is usually displayed. It's always been a point of contention long before they did that. And I know Al Cresta here on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network at the beginning of his program yesterday gave a little treatise on that whole situation that was very, very well done. And I don't know if that's archived at AveMaria.net, but it would be worth listening to. if someone wanted to hear what Al Cresta had to say about that.
Oh.
It was absolutely fantastic. But Barbara, before we get into the nuts and bolts of this, which we'll do here in a little bit, one thing I just kind of wanted to encourage our listeners as, these decisions have we know that Jesus wins in the end because we've read the last chapter of the book. But that doesn't guarantee that each one of us as individuals are going to win in the end. St. Paul encourages us to run the race to the finish.
There you go.
And
Fight the good fight.
There you go. And
Had
here,
to get that plug in there.
and here in America, let's be honest, it is very easy to be Catholic, and it's very easy to be a believer.
For the time being.
In light of human history and even other places around the world in our current day, it's very easy to profess a lot of the things that we profess. And I would encourage our listeners, and I encourage the person in the mirror of this as well, that if there's anything in your life that needs to be cleaned up, clean it up. And if there's anything that you need to put
Amen, Jack.
you need to put it down now, because
yep.
these are the things that will keep someone from doing the right thing in the face of persecution.
Hello. Well, I'm clapping
and we have
for
a
you,
lot
Jack.
of,
That was
of comforts that my fear is we're fixing to find out just how attached we are to those comforts.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, Jack. When I saw the rainbow, the White House lit up like a rainbow, I thought, how arrogant, because that's really, to me, it was defacing a national monument, because the president doesn't own the White House. We do. And so he is saying the people believe in the rainbow flag. 5 justices believe in the rainbow flag, and those who are woefully misguided and confused believe in the rainbow flag. But the president is saying with this that the Constitution doesn't matter, and he's conveniently backed it up by those who should be defending the Constitution. Because that liberal bloc of 5 just vote. They don't judge to defend the Constitution. They vote to make new laws according to their own personal preferences and unredeemed desires, as Father Thomas Dubé would say. And there's no regard there for the will of the people in the states. And that's what upset me so much about that, Jack, when I saw it, because, can you spell tyranny? Honestly, I just, sin obscures sight. And that's kind of where you were going there, that Hans von Balthasar, he's probably one of the best theologians since Thomas Aquinas. He's considered that. And he said that because there can be no wisdom in sin. If a person is proud and full of himself, the Lord says, I'll give you what you want, namely you. So I think that this is where we've got some false prophets running around, and I can throw out another, Henri de Lubac, a French Jesuit priest who became a cardinal. Do you know him? And he's considered, well, he's considered to be one of the most influential theologians of the 20th century. And if we have time, it's just not very, but he defines a false prophet. He said a false prophet is not one who predicts false things, but one whose guiding principle is not the true, one who has an ear more to the world than to God, who fondles the spirit of the age, whether it is embodied in the princes, the influential, or the mass. He takes up the cause of generous ideas just when these, now hold on one second here, just when these are beginning to rot. Because when I read this, I thought, oh my goodness, that is so it, because we were starting to convince more and more of the populace that why, we had to defend marriage. So then he goes on to say he enters the field of action just at the moment when such engagement promises more advantages than dangers. He does not always do what is evil, but his activity is, at the very least, full of vanity. This often discourages the person who can glimpse the impending disaster from agreeing with him. And he always conspires against the true prophets. I think that is brilliantly wise. How about you, Jack?
I couldn't agree more. We're just getting started on an Open Line Tuesday. We would love to hear what you think about the recent Supreme Court decision or any other thing that might be going on in your life or in your neck of the woods. Give us a call at 1-800-585-396. Get in early while the phone lines are open. Open Line Tuesday with Barbara McGuigan.
I see God as a trusting father, a father who really cares for me, is guiding me in his providence, one who really has me wrapped in his love so that I don't need anything as I go through my day-to-day life.
Without God, I'm nothing. Take Two with Jerry and Debbie is a fresh look on life through the eyes of faith, love, and mercy.
Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Weekdays, noon and midnight Eastern on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Tomorrow on EWTN Radio's Open Line, Father Mitch Pacwa takes your calls about the Bible, the Church, and the writings of the Pope. 3 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Hello, this is Father Scott Daniels of Priests for Life with a pro-life update. I often point out that our youth are not simply the future leaders of the pro-life movement. They are leaders here and now in more ways than one. Often I am asked to speak about the role of youth in the pro-life movement and parishes and pro-life organizations to focus more on recruiting youth for this cause. In fact, this is not a difficult task. Youth understand the pro-life message better than many adults, and the most they give to the question, "Why are you involved in trying to stop abortion?" is because it could have been me. They are aware that they were not protected in the womb and could have been killed. They are survivors and they know it. May our young people be strong in protecting the youngest. This is Father Scott, EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question or comment, call 1-800-585-9th America. Call 1-205-271-2985 or send an email to openline@EWTN.com.
We'd love to hear what you think of our programming here at EWTN Radio. Give EWTN Radio's listener comment line a call at 205-795-5773. 205-795-5773 and tell them how much you adore McGuigan on Tuesday's edition of EWTN's Open Line.
Jack, you kill me.
Barbara, we have a YouTube watcher who has given us a question that we might touch on briefly before we get to what I think is a little bit more of a bright spot in this whole story. But Kelly writes in, she says, do you think we'll ever see a widespread investigation and one hopes separation from so-called, quote-unquote, gay-friendly Catholic churches, about 200 of them in the U.S., that continually violate church teaching? Your thoughts?
That's a very, very good question. And I do think that as time goes on, we will see more. Because, and I think that there will be more. You're saying Catholic churches are on board with same-sex marriage, some? Is that what you're saying?
I think Kelly is thinking that there's about 200 of them in the U.S.
I've never seen that figure. That's amazing. I guess I'd really question that first. What was their source on that one? But I think that, there will be consequences of the court's decision, and I think that they're going to see how it damages sexual relationships, and I think that when you redefine marriage, that's something huge that they took upon themselves, and John Henry Weston said, the Supreme Court undermined marriage, effectively making it open season on religious liberty in America. So, okay, you may have made a segment of the population very, very happy dancing in the streets outside of the colored White House. But then you left a huge percentage of people who will now have their religious freedom attacked in many ways, just the way they did in Canada eventually. because, as John Henry said, that this court gave a court's blessing to a redefinition of marriage that is opposed to the will of God, that is opposed to basic human nature, is opposed to the U.S. Constitution. So a triple whammy, if you look at it, really, if you look at it. But what they haven't taken into consideration, and I thought this was interesting, when Canada, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago on Open Line, that Canada, what was it, in 2000, I think they legalized same-sex marriage. And at the time, they had a man by the name of Gens, Gens Helquist, speaking to the government officials just a few years after marriage was redefined in Canada. And he said to them, we have one of the poorest health statuses in this country. He himself was an LGBT activist. And he said health issues affecting, exact words, queer Canadians, that's how they use that word, include lower life expectancy than the average Canadian, suicide, higher rates of substance abuse, depression, inadequate access to care, and HIV/AIDS. And he said these are all kinds of health issues that are endemic to our community. They have higher rates of cancer in the gay male community, and lesbians have higher rates of breast cancer. So he said he's tired of watching his community die. This was 2 years after they legalized same-sex marriage in Canada. He said, in this country, the Centers for Disease Control has shown that while men who have sex with men are perhaps 2% of the U.S. population, they make up nearly 2/3 of all HIV/AIDS victims. So you see, this is gonna backfire. I believe it's going to backfire. It's a sad situation. And I keep asking myself, how did it get this way so quickly? But this is how that whole idea works of the transformation of a culture. Usually it happens very quickly, a sleight of hand kind of quickly. And that's the way it went.
Let's head to the phones. Our leadoff hitter today will be Jim in Pennsylvania. He's listening on AM 720. Jim, you're on with Barbara McGuigan.
Hi, Jim.
Hello. Hi. My question is, worries me, are they going to be able, with this ruling, to force our church or our priest to marry them?
Well, not right away. Just like in Canada, when they wrote in all of their assurances, they have written in assurances in this same-sex marriage law, the law of the land right now, as they keep saying. But what Monsignor Pope, are you familiar with Monsignor Charles Pope?
No.
Well, he's very, very good. He's very, very bright. And he said that it's time our priests and deacons seriously considered surrendering their licenses or whatever it is that grants them authority to witness civil marriages. If the wedding ceremony conducted in the church is purely religious and has no civil effect, i.e. the couple will have to go to the courthouse and see a justice of the peace, he calls him a J, in order to be married in the eyes of the state, then the state cannot impose its will on who will be married in the church. Which he's not the first one to say this, but one of the first ones to say that they just have to basically surrender their licenses. So they can certainly provide a sacramental marriage, but then the couple will have to go to a courthouse and get the civil marriage so they get the paper. So he said, if you accept authority from the state, you must expect to be bound by the state's terms. Justices of the peace and county will be bound to license gay marriages or give up their jobs. But you can't expect priests and deacons to be long exempted unless they take some action now. I think Archbishop Chaput said something like that as well. They would have to give up. Did you happen to read Bishop Strickland's statement from Tyler, Texas? Did you read that, Jim?
No.
Okay, I encourage you to look it up. It's Bishop Strickland's statement on U.S. Supreme Court decision. He talks about how he said, let me unambiguously state at the outset that this extremely unfortunate decision by our government is unjust and immoral, and it is our duty to clearly and emphatically oppose it. In spite of the decision by the Supreme Court, there are absolutely no grounds for considering unions between two persons of the same sex to be in any way similar to God's plan for marriage and family. Regardless of this decision, what God has revealed and what the church therefore holds to be true about marriage changed. How could they change that? And it is unchangeable. Okay, bottom line, in his third last paragraph, he says, given this, and recognizing my responsibility and moral authority as the shepherd of this church of Tyler, I will shortly issue a decree in this diocese establishing as particular law that no member of the clergy or any person acting as employee of the church may in any way participate in the solemnization or consecration of same-sex marriages, and that no Catholic facilities, including churches, chapels, meeting halls, Catholic educational, health, or charitable institutions, or any places dedicated or consecrated or used for Catholic worship, may be used for the solemnization or consecration of same-sex marriages. So our bishops, many, have stepped up to the plate here. They have ponied on up and said it. So I think that was encouraging, and hopefully, who knows what the future holds. You know what they say, we don't know what the future holds, but we know who holds the future. And that's what we have to keep our hope and trust in. We cannot despair, because this is another Roe v. Wade, not in the same way. Same-sex marriage, is not near the gravity as killing unborn children to the tune of over 60 million, right? But the thing is, we cannot lose hope, because when Roe versus Wade was passed, did we ever have a clue that, that at that time, and boy, that's when I was knee-deep in the trenches, there were 1.6 million abortions by 1990. I mean, every year by 1990. And so the high numbers of abortions, though, they did not normalize abortion, as some pro-lifers feared. They all said, oh, once a woman can have an abortion, everything will be cured, everything will be fine. But post-abortive women proved that it wouldn't be fine, and it wasn't. And most abortions would not be performed in hospitals or doctors' offices, but in high-volume clinics at that time. But, look what has happened. So many have closed. Now, granted, this is 42 years after. It takes a while. But what their bold predictions is, they never happened. They said it would lower the incidence of child abuse. Forget that. It's gone up. They said it would reduce the out-of-wedlock birth rate. Forget it. So they didn't know, and I think this is incredible, is the lead plaintiff in the Roe v. Wade decision would become an outspoken pro-life activist. You know what I'm talking about, Jack?
Norma McCorvey.
Yes, Norma McCorvey. And she also converted to Catholicism, too. And she never had an abortion. She was just a pawn. They were using her. Dr. Nathanson tells all this in his book. And then, would we have ever realized that the nation's leading provider of abortions during the 1970s would also become a pro-life activist, thanks to Father Paul Marks, thanks to Father McCloskey, Father Pavone, all these people. Were working on Dr. Bernard Nathanson. He became the greatest pro-life activist around because he had been there. 75 million abortions when he ran the he and his staff. We didn't know about ultrasound technology, remember? At that time, it was just beginning, really. But how quickly it developed, and we saw these vivid ultrasound pictures of unborn children. Now we're seeing 3D, and don't they have 4D, Jack? Is there such a thing as...
My ultrasound knowledge is limited.
So is mine, obviously. But we didn't know that all these factors were going to happen. The whole thing is, God can work wonders in an instant, and he could help us with that.
Cecilia in San Antonio, Texas, hang in there. And I love the subject of your comment. And we've still got time for your phone calls at 1-800-585-9396. Toll free anywhere. 1-800-585-9396. Open line Tuesday with our pro-life warrior, Barbara McGuigan.
Coming up later today on Cresta in the Afternoon.
Our topics during Cresta in the Afternoon toggle between church teaching and then using that teaching to shine a light on our world. We'll look at Christ in culture, church and world, religion and public life, from abortion to Zechariah and everything in between. Biblical criticism, Hollywood productions, academic debate, prayer, and spirituality.
Cresta in the Afternoon, later today on EWTN Radio.
What's stopping you from becoming a Catholic?
Why can't women become priests?
I don't understand why I have to earn salvation.
How is it possible that God created everything?
Why do I need to confess my sins to a priest?
Why is the Catholic Church so unwilling to The Catholic Church is too rich.
Catholics worship Mary and are committed.
As far as I'm concerned, all religions are equal.
You are called to communion with Dr. David Anders. Today, 2 p.m. Eastern on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
On the next Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo.
We'll keep you closely connected to the faith with the latest from Rome, the front lines of the pro-life movement, and we'll also take a look at other crucial issues facing you and your family in our one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church.
Catholic Connection, weekday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Matt Swaim here, inviting you to start your day a better way with the Sunrise Morning Show, weekday mornings here on EWTN. It's a fast-paced program where we cover apologetics and the saint of the day, plus news, sports, entertainment, and family life, all from a Catholic perspective. So join us weekday mornings here on EWTN.
The Sunrise Morning Show. Better way to start your day.
Pray with us, the Holy Rosary, daily on the Global Catholic Network, EWTN.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question or comment, call 1-800-585-9396. In North America, call 1-205-271-2985 or send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
You know, I have in front of me what we call a tease sheet, where I'm going to tell you about what's going on EWTN television tonight and tomorrow night. Now, tonight, Mother Angelica Live Classics is going to talk about how we love. And these things are solid gold. Her teaching is as viable today as it was the day that it was issued on television the first time, some 20 years ago. So tonight, How We Love, Mother Angelica Live's Classics. And tomorrow night on EWTN Live with Father Mitch, it's really a tease because his guests are Sister Margaret Mary from the Daughters of St. Mary of Providence and Father Alphonse from the Pious Union of St. Joseph. And what they're going to talk about with Father Mitch tomorrow, as I look here at my tease sheet, I have no idea. None whatsoever. So this is a tease for Open Line, where we'll have Father Mitch here, and he can tell you exactly what Sister Mary is going to talk about. And that's tomorrow night at 8 Eastern on EWTN television. And you know what? The ratings for that show tomorrow night are going off the roof based on this promo. That's exactly right. Back to the phones we go, Barbara. Cecilia in San Antonio, Texas, listening on FM 89.7. And today we celebrate the optional memorial of the early church martyrs. And I think that makes Cecilia's comment even more poignant. Cecilia, you're on with Barbara.
Hi, Cecilia.
Hi, Barbara.
How are you today,
I actually didn't realize that today was the first Christian martyr, so it was just by divine providence.
Nothing by chance with our God.
Yeah, right. I was thinking of was while telling my husband about all this Supreme Court stuff was that in the early church, how Christianity converted Rome or won Rome over was because all of the only people that were left to marry were Christian women. You know, I was telling him how the babies would be put out on the side of the city, and then the wolves would eat them, and then by the time it was time for a man to get married, the only women that were left were Christian, and then they would procreate, and then they would have and babies.
Beautiful
And,
point.
And I said, you know, it kind of reminds me of what's going on today in a sense, because I'm pregnant. I'm 19 weeks pregnant. And I said the best thing, the witness we can have for Christianity today and for the family is me being pregnant, you know, and showing the world that you and I are in love and the family and what it means to be a. And I said, you and I are going to be able to have babies and teach our children the faith and love in Jesus Christ. And I said, and they, you know, they can't if and two men can't, two women can't, unless they pay thousands and thousands, $100,000 to try to do in vitro or, you know, try to go that route. But I said, we did it was free.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And I said, so the best way that we can witness to what's true and to is to do what we're doing right now, is to having a family.
That's
and for
right.
me, continue to have babies and teach our children the faith and to love them. Like I said this.
No, you are very wise and just so eloquent, Cecilia. And that is so true. We cannot despair. That is the main thing. And really, if and Christianity, and you have studied Catholicism, and it really was the first Christians who, they didn't practice contraception, which they had at those times in very primitive forms, but they took, you know, pharmakeia, different types of poisons put together to kill the baby. It's a wonder if they didn't kill themselves at the same time. I don't know, but the Christians stood out because they were against abortion. They were against infanticide, which was very popular, as you mentioned, just leaving your little child drowning pools and leaving your little child out on hills to die. And so the Christians stood out, and it all went back to contraception and abortion, for Pete's sake. It was the same exact thing that sent these dear souls to the lions. And so, yes, you're right. Hopefully it will not come to that. Hopefully God will intercede and just stop the whole mess in an instant. I don't know how he will do that. Who knows? But you're right. We have to continue to love and never to despair, because God is in control. Sometimes some people think he's asleep in the boat, just like the apostles, just like our scripture lately. But no, he's not. He's not asleep in the boat. He was testing their faith. And so there you go. But that was brilliant, Cecilia. Thank you so much.
God bless you, Cecilia. Thanks so much for that phone call. We'll head now to North Dakota. Joyce, listening on FM 91.1. Joyce, you're on with Barbara McGuigan.
Hi, Joyce.
Hey, hold on 1 second here.
Okay.
I had the phone on a second, and I didn't figure that worked real well.
Right. You're right there. You got that right.
Okay. My parents and I have been calling back and forth every time we hear another little news update. And we now, between them and me, have heard that like 3 different states have spoken up against this, either the state themselves or the clerks of court. One state apparently has been ordered to issue the same-sex marriage licenses. Mm-hmm. And they said that they wouldn't issue any marriage licenses, even though they wanted to. Another state, I guess, has, and I don't know which states off the top of my head, but another state has apparently said that if it is against your religious morals to issue a same-sex marriage license, don't do it.
If enough states stood up against that, that would be a beautiful thing, and it possibly would at least help to try to rectify this whole problem and overturn it. Mm-hmm. But I would wonder if enough states would do that. It would be incredibly wonderful if they did refuse, because basically what the Supreme Court did was say that we will rule you. We will now rule you. This is not the vote of the people. We will rule you. Okay. And you poor states, 33 states who have some kind of protections written into law against same-sex marriage, and for those who do not want to do it, basically they're saying, sorry, our ruling trumps whatever you did in your state.
Okay, and I wasn't 100% sure on that. My one concern, though, well, not the only concern, but one that comes to mind is this going to end up making it illegal to have a publicly recognized marriage?
That it would make it illegal for whom?
For anyone.
I see.
To basically make it so that marriage is outlawed.
That would, see, the reason they want this all to be registered with the state is for tax purposes. So for them to say that you don't need a legal, I just don't think that would fly too well with the IRS. What do you think, Jack?
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily. It may have started out that way, but I think the biggest part of the activists now are that's certainly a concern, but they've had most places a civil union would take care of your tax situation, but that has not been good enough for them.
Well, right, but aren't you saying,
which tells me that it goes beyond a tax situation. It's not what they're about. It's the same situation that you had in Indiana, where there were any number of places where a cake could have been made. Yeah. And they specifically and strategically chose who they were going to go after.
Because it was part of the agenda.
That's right.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, a sacramental marriage means everything to us, when for some people it means absolutely nothing. It would seem to me, as long as we had the sacramental marriage, we're married in God's eyes, and all will be well. But I know that there's a reason why you have to have a state license for marriage. So they also want to know who in the population is married, I suppose. But I thought it came down to the money aspect of it. But we'll get into this a little bit more, Joyce, and figure out all these questions. But I sure do thank you for your call.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for that phone call. If you've got a comment about the recent ruling or anything else that you'd like to have Barbara's opinion on, the number's 1-800-585-9396, toll-free anywhere in North America, 1-800-585-9396. Adele is in Lafayette. She's listening on FM 90.5. Adele, you're on with Barbara McGuigan.
Hi, Adele.
Hi. I'm in Lafayette. And happy to be speaking with you. I happen to have my radio on today, available. And who knows with the going on around here, I get cut off. But I did want to say, have this comment. With the same-sex marriage Supreme Court business, Catholic schools are going to be a huge target for these activists.
Huge.
First of all, I know that in the past 2 or 3 years, they put in or had school administration hire certain people who, after they had been in, later revealed that they were married to, a person of the same sex. And then there were lawsuits. They were, terminated, lawsuits, discrimination, all that stuff. So all of that's going to be full-blown. Schools in a couple of weeks or months or whatever. Also, the schools, in my opinion, anyone who takes federal money for any purpose.
There you go.
Whether it's cafeteria, library, programs or whatever, they're going to be required to follow protocol, whatever the protocol comes down from Washington. And then, of course, there will be courses and book wording and pictures and descriptions of families, and this is not allowed, and all of that.
You're right.
That's all coming down. So if anybody was thinking of homeschooling their kid this year, it might be a good day. It'd be a good time to start.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think they need to forget about the tax-exempt status. Do you remember when they were discussing all of this in the deliberations, the Supreme Court, and the court held that this was in the Bob Jones case, that college was not entitled to tax-exempt status if it opposed interracial marriage or interracial dating. So they were asked, Justice Alito, as a matter of fact, asked this in those deliberations. So he said, would the same apply to a university or a college if it opposed same-sex marriage? So the Solicitor General, Verrilli was his name, he said, I don't think I can answer that question without knowing more specifics, but it's certainly going to be an issue. He said, I don't deny that. I don't deny that, Justice Alito. It is going to be an issue. And that's when Chief Justice John Roberts jumped in and he said, would a religious school that has married housing be required to afford such housing to same-sex couples? And that's when, so I mean, I'm telling you, what this did to us is going to be really monumental, ominous, maybe not instantly. It takes time for these things. But yes, I be prepared to pay fines. Some of us will be prepared to go to jail. And I think God only knows, like who was a Cardinal George who said he will die in his bed. His successor will die in jail. And his successor will die in the public square. And, of course, then the blood of the martyrs, the seeds of the faith. And then we'll have a very beautiful period when it will all come back to the truth, what it should be.
Bill, driving through the state of Mississippi, hang in there. You're going to be up next, and we've still got time for your phone call at 1-800-585-9396. Toll free anywhere in North America, 1-800-585-9396. Open line Tuesday with our pro-life warrior, Barbara McGuigan.
Next time on Mother Angelica Live Classics, Mother Angelica revisits the book of Corinthians to show how chapter 13 reveals ways Christians are called to love God and one another. Join Mother for the answer. How do you love? Next time on EWTN's Mother Angelica Live Classics.
Podcasts of Open Line are available within 24 hours of live broadcast. Go to EWTN.com and click on Multimedia.
This is Life Issues with Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
Pro-life Governor Greg Abbott signed into law a bill that will protect its citizens from being starved or dehydrated to death in the state's hospitals. Previous law allowed hospitals to remove food and water from patients without their consent or the consent of their families, and they only had 10 days' notice to find another facility willing to take the patient. Sadly, most states have similar laws to Texas. You need to find out what your rights are. Most people think they're safe. It's up to them or a trusted family member. Not so. Knowledge is power. So find out where you stand. Visit today's broadcast link at lifeissues.org, where you'll find a link to the Terry Schiavo Life and Hope Network. You can go there to get the answers you need.
For more information, visit our at lifeissues.org and stay informed, more informed than you've ever been.
Matt Swaim here, inviting you to start your day a better way with the Sunrise Morning Show, weekday mornings here on EWTN. It's a fast-paced program where apologetics, scriptures, and the saint of the day, plus news, sports, entertainment, and family life, all from a Catholic perspective. So join us weekday mornings here on EWTN.
The Sunrise Morning Show. Better way to start your day.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question or comment, call 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985 or send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
We're in the home stretch on an Open Line Tuesday. Next up is Bill, driving through the great state of Mississippi, listening on the mighty 690. Bill, thanks so much for holding on. You're on with Barbara McGuigan.
Yeah, hi, Barbara. This is Bill Blaisdell. I'm on the highway down in near New Orleans.
Thanks for calling in. How can we help?
Well, my comment was listening to you on the road, and I wanted to comment on the fact that listening to this comment by a certain politician, I won't mention her name, but she's a Democrat and she's running for president. And her comment was that.
Does it rhyme with Hillary?
I'm 80 years old, and I didn't come in with yesterday's milk, and I've heard a lot of really odd things from politicians, but that comment chilled me to the bone, that we had to somehow change our religious beliefs.
Yeah.
And when I combined that with what the Supreme Court came up with last week,
yep.
I mean, if you put the two together, it gives me the willies.
It really
like to get
does.
Your comments on that, just kind of marrying those two ideas, it's just well, of course, we can't see the future, but we really wonder what this bodes.
You're so right, Bill. And the whole thing is that these souls that are involved in all of this, they are not catechized people. They are not catechized souls. You see, the worldly world, they're part of the worldly world, and it's never concerned with truth. But all they're concerned about, especially politicians, they're only concerned with what the polls say, with how they feel in their heart. Like the president said, he evolved into thinking that, it's a matter of compassion to be for same-sex marriage, right? So, or what they choose to do, or what their preferences are. And so when you've lost the truth, or when you've at least turned your back on what is good, true, and beautiful, when you've turned your back on the scriptures that constantly refer to the truth, then you don't have sound doctrine, which is another word for Jesus Christ, 2 words for Jesus Christ, of course. But those who do have sound doctrine are being led by the Holy Spirit, because they're being led by truth, and God is the purest truth. So is what puts us in touch with, not just with reality, as you always hear me say, stay in reality, but it puts us in touch with the supreme beloved, with God. And this is why we're willing to march into the Colosseum. This is exactly why the Christians were willing to march into the Colosseum. This is why during Operation Rescue, we were being arrested and thrown in jail like a bunch of cattle with those wrist, what do you call those things, Jack? Those plastic ties that they put zip ties, and they put it so tight that it almost cut off your circulation. But we were willing to do it because we know our supreme beloved. And for that reason, we know what is real, we know what is honest, we know what is faithful, and we know what is loving, because that's Him. They do not know God. They would like to tell you, but in their own image to them. And it's evident in what their choices are. That you'll know them by their fruits, as Scripture says. So that's as much as I can say about that, Bill, because that's what we believe, and that's what we all believe, right? Don't you think?
Absolutely. But I'm just when you notice that sometimes the silence on her comments, you wonder you don't know how many people are silent because they accept it or they just aren't paying attention. I mean, we've got to start paying attention. Coming at us like a freight train.
Well, and that's why this next election, Bill, is so important. If we can't get it together by this next election, I think personally, and this is just my opinion, I think this is one last chance at least for our generation and our grandchildren, children and grandchildren. It's our last chance to try to turn this whole thing around, this next election. And if we have 14 candidates, for Pete's sake, if we can't get the right one to go against all of this tyranny, I don't know what is going to happen. It's not going to be good.
Thanks, Bill, so much for that phone call. We'll head now to Kansas City, Missouri. Marissa listening on AM 1090. Marissa, you're on with Barbara McGuigan.
Hi, Marissa.
Hi, how are you?
Well, I'm as good as we can all be right now. I mean, deep down, I'm, I God, and I know that He is faithful, and I know that He's in control. But what has just happened? I wonder if everyone realizes how serious this last decision was. I just wonder. And the one before Obamacare. But what can we do for you, dear lady?
My question was, and I didn't know if this had crossed anybody else's mind, but going back to when our country was founded and the Constitution and all the laws that were founded with that. Our forefathers founded this country, one nation under God. And you see that every time you exchange money and, different times throughout the year. And what does everybody think about that? Why are we forgetting? How could the Supreme Court, in good conscience, pass this when we were founded one nation under God and his principles?
Because they think they know better. They actually think they know better than our God, our Creator. They know better. And it's a slap in his face. It is a big slap in his face. When you lose your faith, you lose your mind. Okay? You lose your reason. You can no longer reason because you left. You see? And that's the whole problem. Not everyone in this country sees this as one nation under God, sees America as that anymore. And that's the serious problem. And when we got all caught up in government funding and our institutions, our hospitals, Monsignor Pope said 60% of Catholic Charities' annual budget comes from various federal sources. That's why they had to stop, doing adoptions, because they were being forced of their annual budgets coming from the feds. They had to stop adoption practices because they refused to adopt two gay couples. So, when you start taking money, they sooner or later get their big foot in the door. And then they start dictating to you what you should be doing. One of my big beefs with Common Core. Because they got it into Catholic schools, many Catholic schools, not all, but many, because of the money they were going to give them. See, they know what they're doing. They have the wisdom of the world. That's it.
Thanks, Marissa, so much for that phone call. Very quickly, Joni in Omaha, Nebraska, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Joni, we've got about 30 seconds.
Oh, goodness. Hi, Joni.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Yes, my question is, I have heard several times on Catholic media, and I don't know who the people are saying this, that there was no reason for the government to issue marriage licenses for marriage if it weren't for the fact that married couples have children, because it's to protect the children.
And I think she may have nailed it right there.
There you go. That's a very good point. That is a great point. Thank you for calling in at the last second.
Thanks so much, Johnny. We appreciate it. Barbara, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, too, Jack.
On behalf of our hostess, Barbara McGuigan, our producer, Elena Rodriguez, call screener, Matt Kubinski. Back at it tomorrow. Until then, God bless.
Oh.
Do you have a promo, Barbara?
No, I don't. But Jack, my screen was down again.
Yeah, ours was too, and we have an issue with we're doing new media now and a bunch of other stuff, and so and our server, our assistant producer server, will only handle so many clients logged on at a time.